to another edition of Gas. I am Gresh. He is Jason Anik.
You were playing everybody and we're winning the game last night.
The head coach is fighting people on the sideline.
What do you got for me?
I know you're a part of the Tight Pants Society.
No fucking play is that a gimme, right?
Oh my goodness gracious, it is the 17th edition of Gas for those of you counting at home. And as the great Steve Summers of the Fan would say, and I know you are, it's another edition of Gas with Gresh and Jason Anik. Oh, look at that. Look at that little, are you tan? Do I see pigment? Do I see color on you after spending a couple of days in Las Vegas?
I didn't get, well, we live in South Florida, so we're always going to have a little sun, or at least try to be sun-kissed, but we're always going to be a little tanner than you, Gresh, even if we were living in New England. Would we not be?
I would hope so, because as a, you and your brother are about a half of my weight. So, it's much easier to go outside as a thin than a fat, but I digress. I wanted to fatten my bank account on the UFC 313 card, and had Peloton had Chama come through, I would have been looking pretty good. But of course, we now have a new UFC light heavyweight champion. It is Magomed Ankalaev. I think for a lot of people, Jay, looking for a better stylistic fight, they maybe came away a little disappointed. But look, I can't hate on Ankalaev for doing what he needed to do to win the fight.
No question about it. And my brother John always says nothing greater than seeing a fighter realize a championship for the first time. But I do feel like a lot of Magomed Ankalaev's fights, you do sort of have that taste in your mouth afterward, like, even his draw with Jan Blachowicz back in the day, I enjoyed more than most, but it just kind of is what it is. I feel as though oftentimes in the UFC, these guys offset each other, right? You're going against a tough dude. I think in certain spots, Peloton was maybe afraid of what was coming back. Not only the fear of the takedown, but also maybe the power and the strength of Ankalaev. So, hats off to the new champ. Peloton will be back. I typically don't like immediate rematches, but in this situation, sign me up.
Well, I think you have to, because now some of the doors for Peloton have kind of closed a little bit. Whereas he wins this, keeps the light heavyweight championship, then does du Plessis move up to fight him? Or after John Jones and Tom Aspinall, if they get that in the ring, which I assume UFC will at some point this year, then, you got Peloton maybe in the mix there. But now it kind of resets almost the board a little bit in a way, Jay, to where now we know what is the next big heavyweight fight. We know the next light heavyweight fight. Who's going to challenge du Plessis? I don't know. And your guy Bilal Muhammad has already got a date booked for Montreal to defend his 170-pound title. So I feel like in a weird way, even though Peloton lost, it feels like it kind of set the board for what will be kind of the next round of title fights.
Yeah, I mean, I think it reset the board, but by no means do I think it closed any doors, as you were saying, right? Peloton's going to compete for a title next, whether it's heavyweight, whether it's middleweight down. If he's going to fight du Plessis, it's probably going to be down at middleweight. He certainly can fight at middleweight. Either way, he is still the number one superstar in the sport, and I don't think that changes. And I also think he's very committed. I think he reacted well to the loss, so I can't get enough. It was a tremendous night, right? And Justin Gaethje, highlight for me was the highlight. Justin Gaethje, for those of us that are Justin Gaethje fans, which is everyone, that overused phrase my brother talked about, your favorite fighter's favorite fighter. Well, that may be Justin Gaethje, but Justin Gaethje, after losing to Max Holloway at UFC 300, while everyone loved that moment, not necessarily for Justin Gaethje, right? And I think he rewatched that fight. He didn't watch the last 10 seconds. So for him to rebound from that as an underdog and cash here against Rafael Fiziev, great stuff there in the co-main event.
Yeah, I ultimately got kind of talked into Gaethje. I was sort of, from a gambling end, I was kind of back and forth a little bit as to which way I would go, which way I'd go on that one. And for me, it was more Peloton losing the main event. But it was a fun weekend out in Vegas. I know I did a little preview show on ESPN radio, and one of the things that we were landing on for that Gaethje fight, Jay, was what's the tougher thing to overcome? Gaethje, the way he got knocked out in his last fight, as you mentioned, against Holloway, or the fact that Fiziev was coming back and it was like 523 days that he hadn't been in the octagon, and your buddy Dominic Cruz actually came on and said it was tougher for Gaethje in both instances. We asked 3 different people that question, and Dom gave us the most intricate answer, but it completely made a lot of sense. And then Gaethje just went out and did what Justin Gaethje does anyway.
Nobody more intricate than Dom, and Dom is well documented that he doesn't believe in ring rust, so it doesn't surprise me that he fell on that side. But the other man pictured on your screen, Ignacio La Jaula Bahamondes, a.k.a. Nacho. I am happy to consider him my friend. What a night for him. Bilal Muhammad, the UFC welterweight champion, in his corner. He fights Jalen Turner, who was ranked number 13. I saw Nacho on Thursday, and the first thing he said to me, this is before the fight, he said, "Do I look like number 13? I said, "You do." I said, "You look number 13. He's now number 15. He found his way into the UFC rankings in the lightweight division, which is just beyond stacked in that glorified division. But so happy for him. Jalen Turner sort of gets him on the ground, and then Nacho on his back dominates, not only with the strikes, but then gets the triangle finish, whatever it may be. The submission, just an unbelievable finish for him, an unbelievable moment for Team Valley Flow.
Yeah, that was impressive. Bahamondes was very impressive in a short amount of time. It didn't really take long for Nacho to go out there and get the win. So we kind of treat UFC 313 because I would say it's the one thing that Jay and I could probably go back and forth on all day, and I would be wrong about a lot of stuff, which would actually be a ton of fun. But we're going to segue into the National Football League because, boy, Jay, it's unbelievable how the tampering period is supposed to start at noon on Monday, and at like 12:01, thank you very much, Cody, there it was, at 12:01, it's, boy, that was a quick negotiation. Here is, and we get like 15 right off the board at 12:01, a minute after noon of the tampering period. Look out, these guys start flying off the board, but the New England Patriots did what they did in 2021, and they jumped right into the pool of, I think to the surprise of some, Jay, adding a lot of defense to this Patriots team now led by Mike Vrabel.
Well, I'm more anxious to get your thoughts on all of this than share my own. But one theme that I felt came through for Mike Vrabel was really having a plan, and a plan where even if the top guys fall through, Ronnie Stanley ain't coming through that door, Chris Godwin, even T. Higgins, right? If those sort of priority superstar guys aren't coming through the door, what's your plan? And I would say plan B was better than plan B. We could go player by player. Milton Williams. Unbelievable.
I'm shocked. And to me, Jay, this came down to he's one of the best interior defensive tackles in the market. I know Carolina was looking to throw some money at him. This was the pure, we're just going to bowl you over with a contract. I don't think every one of these guys were, wow, this money is so good, I can't pass it up. But it felt like there was a legitimate bidding war to go get an interior defensive tackle that, quite honestly, I didn't think was on the board. I never considered Milton Williams even a possibility because I thought there were other ways to be able to build that defensive line. But my goodness, for as big as the Carlton Davis signing is, and we can get into the why in a moment, the Milton Williams one really stands out because now you can start to see a defensive line coming together now with Williams, with Barmore, you have Keon White, and then like Harold Landry's listed as an outside linebacker, but to me, he's really a defensive end.
Agreed. Oh God, there's so many places to go with all of this, right? And we're going to talk about DK Metcalf later, but wouldn't you love to give your $100 million to Milton Williams instead of like DK Metcalf on the outside? You know what I mean? It's like this guy, Milton Williams. And I'll say my friend Labo, who is he's from Massachusetts, thick Boston accent, but he's a diehard Eagles fan and he really knows the Eagles. And I leaned on him a lot this season. And he just said he would take him over Sweat any day, which maybe is Sweat signed with the Cardinals, and that may be obvious, right? But this kid, it's interesting. He doesn't play all the snaps, right? I want to ask you about that. He doesn't play all the snaps. He did sort of share duty. Your thoughts on that?
I think he will now. I think there's a better well, because if there's one thing that Vrabel does like in just looking at his history is, you got to rotate defensive linemen, but they like 3-down linemen. And to me, that's what Milton Williams can be. We'll do the who they're replacing because I do think as a matter of context, it does sort of add a layer to the to sort of what they're building here. But I think for Milton Williams, Jay, in Philadelphia, there's reason for those defensive tackles to rotate. And I didn't know the exact sort of why they rotated them the way they did. I just know this. Milton Williams will be challenged like he has never been before. And in terms of playing for a salty ball coach, let's remember that the defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles last year saw Methuselah and, saw Moses in short pants. I mean, we're talking about a 70-year-old crusty-ass defensive coordinator in Philadelphia who yells at his players. My God, he holds them accountable and yells at them. But that's going to be Mike Vrabel. And, Jay, to me, that's the thing that excites me the most is that I think the personality match with Milton Williams and this coaching staff brings more out of him on a 3-down basis.
Oh, I can't get enough of it. And I guess he was the number one priority for them. We talked a lot. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles and what they just did to win the Super Bowl on both sides of the line. I'm just so thrilled with the way the Patriots have built this thing. And I would have been decent. I would have been okay. I think free agency is difficult, right? Like obtaining a guy like Chris Godwin, who that contract looks a lot better in the state of Florida with no state income tax than it would in New England, also a team that he has played for. But it's difficult to lock these guys up, and I think the Patriots would have done okay had they not gotten Milton Williams. But this flips everything. What do you think about his size in that spot? Some say he's undersized.
No, I think he'll be fine. There's some versatility there as well with Williams and the ability to kind of move around the interior part of that defensive line. I think what it's going to do is it's kind of highlighting, Jay, the fact that the Patriots are going to a more active front. If you really look at Devon Godshaw, he was never really a pocket presser. He was never really a pass rusher. He was much more of the, and I'm not even going to say Vince Wilfork, because Wilfork was active when he wanted to be. To me, Godshaw profiled more like a Ted Washington back in the day, where he's a big body that you can't move, is just going to eat up the middle, and everybody else kind of run around him. Well, as we found out, he was a tad ineffective at that, and I think there is the want for more mobile, active defensive linemen, and that's why I think they're also going to fall in love with Keon White.
Oh, dude, I'm so fired up.
Oh, where do we play this guy? And you have a real pass rusher on the opposite side of him. It was Keon White for the first couple of weeks, and then he got shut down because nobody else emerged in the Patriots defense. Now you have people that are active all across the board. It's going to activate Keon White in a big way.
Oh, give me all this. And Aaron Donald, not the biggest guy on that defensive. On that defensive line over the years, one of the greatest of all time. Do we move to Carlton Davis? It's an interesting conversation with cornerback. A lot of people think Charvarius Ward or even DJ Reed might have been better options. I'm not one of them. Carlton Davis, your thoughts? 3 years, $60 million coming over from Detroit.
Well, and I had mentioned that the defensive coordinator, Williams, coming over from Detroit, looked for him to start to look within. And we said it here last week. Are the Patriots going to run more zone? Are they going to run more man? This screams to me they're going to be a man defense. When you look at Carlton Davis, this is a guy who's man on the outside, just like Christian Gonzalez. Both those corners can travel if need be. For those who don't get the reference, it means if they lock him in on one wide receiver and they're running all over the board, then by goodness, they're going to run all over with that wide receiver. I think when you also throw in some of the depth they have, it screams man coverage, which is what you want to do when you have active defensive linemen.
Oh, I love it. Give me all of it. So a lot of people describe this dude as feisty, right? Drafted in 2018 in Tampa Bay, won a Super Bowl with Brady. I wonder if Vrabel called Tom Brady up. Probably not. Brady's all about the Raiders these days. So maybe that phone call
you're right.
Isn't made, but he just seems like a dog. He's a good tackler. And, he's bigger than Reed, right? Reed's 5'9". And in terms of the guaranteed money, I think Reed's guaranteed money is only a couple million more. So I like this signing very much. I think also, too, he has, look, we know Christian Gonzalez, second team All-Pro. He is him. He's a complete stud. But I like bringing in a veteran that has a real edge, because if there's one thing for Christian Gonzalez, that maybe, I don't think anything's lacking, but maybe he could play with a little bit more of an edge. I just absolutely love this. And dude, and we haven't even talked about the guys in the middle of the defense. All three levels.
Well, and that's where they need some help on the in the middle of the defense. But Jay, I would also say this as well. when you think about sort of where the game is going, you got to have at least one, if not two corners on the outside who have the ability to match up a little bit. And with Gonzalez, you can do different things with him, meaning he's big enough you can play press man if you want to. You can have him be a catcher 5 yards down the field, have the physicality more as they're trying to get into a route versus at the top of the route. Whereas with Davis, I feel like it's the go cover that guy. The way we used to think about Malcolm Butler. Malcolm Butler was he was Mr. Trail technique. It felt like he was always behind, but he would knock the ball down or be there to make the tackle. I think that's what I'm expecting from Carlton Davis on the outside. And if you and I sat here last year and talked about Marcus Jones a little bit, mixing him in on offense, but really the perfect spot for Marcus Jones is slot corner. Now,
Right.
he's not gonna be handed a job, but he will have the opportunity to earn that thing. And right now, if you look at who's on the piece of paper, you now with just one move add a second corner to help Gonzalez, but more importantly, you're slotting Marcus Jones where he should be as well. So you're improving the defense overall.
Absolutely. And you put him in a position to do his job and build depth by him finding a role. What are your thoughts on Robert Spillane? 3 years, $37.5 million. This is the leader I was looking for. I talked about Dre Greenlaw. I see that look on your face. But what I will say is a lot of Raiders fans, some that I know, are not happy to see this guy walk out the door. Go ahead.
Yeah, the production is really good. I'm still kind of wondering, Jay, where's the fit? Because we talked about Keon White, right? So now you add defensive linemen, you have Keon White, but you also have Harold Landry on the other side. And if you go by the way they list these guys, Harold Landry is listed as an outside linebacker, and so is Robert Spillane. Now, that ain't going to shake out that way, right? Somebody is going to have to do more within their, everybody focuses on the sacks. But to me, with Spillane, I wonder how he's going to fit. Because if he's really a stand-up kind of pass rusher, outside linebacker type guy, then one of your defensive linemen that you like has got to then come off the field if you're going to use them up. That's why I wonder how they work Spillane into this defense. Is he going to be a complementary guy to someone like a Jawan Bentley? Or is he there to ultimately, as weird as this sounds, because they have him listed as an outside linebacker, is he there to replace someone that is already there? So at the linebacker spot, I'm befuddled because people normally play with two. And I don't know which two the Patriots would put on the field right now based on some of these guys being listed as outside linebackers.
Great stuff again. I mean, I think Spillane's going to see the field a lot. I think Vrabel knows him well, and I'm sure Vrabel would have a great answer to what you're wondering about. So in terms of his numbers, like you said, though, he's 29 years old, right? Started all 17 games for the second straight year for Vegas, which means something, right? The durability. Had at least 10 tackles in 8 games last season. I love that. In a Week 17 loss to the Chargers, 16 tackles in 17 defensive snaps. Just a dog. And I think Vrabel's bringing in dogs. I mean, this team's going to feel so different. 125-1 to win the Super Bowl, no more. Down to 75-1. Say what you will. Over, under season wins, whatever it may be. I'm so excited.
Well, and doing a little digging, and I think it was Mark Daniels, I'm pretty sure, of the Mass Live. And I'm trying to find the tweet of the connections that he had of the players that were signed, and the fact that at least one member of the coaching staff, Jay, has a connection to these dudes, right? Like obviously Williams, the D coordinator, knows about Carlton Davis, but I do believe it was either Dobbs or Hollins have crossed paths with Josh McDaniels before. Doug Marrone.
Hollins had a great year with him in Vegas, I believe.
Perfect. And I know that was a guy you liked because he's a little different. He's barefoot. He's walking into stadiums.
Yeah, we like the eclectic guy. And what I will say, right, he's still a dog. As he's walking in all these outfits in the postseason for the Buffalo Bills, what I keep thinking is this dude has earned his place on the NFL rosters. I think he's played on 5 different teams in 5 years or whatever it may be. There were a couple of balls, tough catches that he goes up and gets. Yep. But I didn't love seeing him number 1 on your depth chart. He needs to be number 3 on your WR3. I'm fine with Mac Hollins, but no, I like it. I think he can play football, and Vrabel building a culture already.
Well, and you look at, Tonga has connections to the defensive coordinator now. Morgan Moses connections to Doug Marrone. And I know that, and Cody did a great job of kind of pulling up the depth chart now to
Yeah.
give you sort of an overview as to where this team is at. And when I look at Mac Hollins, Jay, that's a guy who may not produce very much, but his role on this team is going to be vital. This is no disrespect to Kendrick Bourne, who's done a good job of trying to be the veteran leader of that wide receiver group, but they needed another guy. They needed someone that honestly, Jay, will push up from the bottom of the roster. Like you said, this is a guy who's a third or a fourth in reality. Well, with a guy like Hollins there, you at least create a little bit of competition. You put some people on notice, but you also bring a guy who I think is going to be a uniter in that kind of wide receiver room. And this is another group that Josh McDaniels, along with the quarterback Drake May, has really got to sink his teeth into. So putting someone in that room who has dealt with Josh before, I think works wonders for these wide receivers who are about to get, I think, a little bit of a wake-up call in dealing with Josh McDaniels when it comes to toughness, route running, spacing, things like that.
Can Travis Hunter be in that room too? Would that be
Bro,
okay? Would that be okay with you?
Can I tell you something? And I know that I put it in a different part of our little rundown or whatnot, but I know. No, listen, we're good, baby. Because when I looked last night and I saw that the New England Patriots are still the odds-on favorite to end up with Travis Hunter, I about peed my pants. I mean, they're plus 185 and the Giants are plus 290. I think one of the takeaways that I have, Jay, and we the whole looking at the whole view of the roster, you can now put a representative 46 on the field today. All you need is a kicker. That'd be it.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, you have 46 right now that are veterans that they might not be the best, but you can win with them. And to me, and you and I talked about this last week, how are they going to go about doing it? Are they going to make the big splash? I even put out on Twitter a way to get T. Higgins without giving up your first-round pick. Now, people were quibbling with me, and you and I can unpack that a little bit, but they've resisted saying, well, Ronnie Stanley's gone, so let's just go get the next best left tackle on the board because that's what the sheet says we should do. No, they were very particular in going out and getting Morgan Moses. So it's evident they have a profile and a plan as to what they want to do. But, I mean, Travis Hunter would just I would burst. I really would. I would burst because they would be set up, meaning the Patriots, Jay, if they wanted to. Now, this would be wild because they went out and signed Davis. Imagine they end up with Hunter, and you and I have been talking about, well, just plug him in a corner, he's ready to go, and then nurture him at wide receiver. If the Patriots somehow ended up with this guy and he didn't go out and steal a starting corner spot, you in theory could develop a 25-25 package for the guy where it's 25 on defense and 25 on offense, or do something unique like that. See, now I'm like a puppy with two Peters. Now I'm not going to be able to stop.
Well, and ultimately, the Carlton Davis signing doesn't change anything in terms of Travis Hunter, in my opinion. You put yourself in a position to draft the best available player. We all know that we think
Bingo.
Travis Hunter is that guy, even if it's number one overall. I'll believe it when I see it, him being there at 4. But as you talked about receivers, and we talk about WR3, 4, 2, whatever it may be, hard for me not to think about Travis Hunter. And gosh, when you look at this roster position by position, March 10th, 2025 versus March 11th, 2025, it's a whole different conversation. I couldn't be more excited. But I want to ask you a question. And I know this is off the beaten path and not in the rundown, but your friend Albert Breer,
yes,
I believe it was on NBC Boston, just talked about how in the dark ages this organization is in terms of whether it be the locker room and just the vibe overall, in terms of spending money on different things and being an appealing place for free agents. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like if I'm Bob Kraft now, Vrabel got all these guys in here. Can we update some facilities? Can we make are things nicer across the street at TB12?
No, they're building a new facility down there. So they are building like a quote unquote football only building. But in all seriousness, if the fact that they don't have a goddamn Chuck E. Cheese and a birthing center for your family, so that way you can have your kid at halftime and you can go back out and play the game, and there's a midwife there to help you. These guys are like, wah, oh, $60 million isn't enough because you don't give me my breaded chicken breast on Thursday, or I don't get my chicken patty on Friday. No, Jay, it drives me nuts because if you don't go somewhere because they don't have facilities like Alabama, then go. You're not focused on football.
No, it's 2025. Stop showing me pictures of the outside of the Patriots of their own plane when they still have ashtrays on the interior of the plane. You got to upgrade it. And for me, it's more about doing the facilities for guy 53 on the roster, for guy 50 on the roster. And look, it's 2025, bro. This is big business. They need to be taken care of. And to me, it's about the performance component of it too, right? Tom Brady had to do his own thing with Alex Guerrero on the sidelines.
Well, I would look at it this way. I think the Patriots are about business, which is why they closed in the one end of the stadium and they didn't decide to completely like tear up the locker rooms. What's happened, unfortunately, is that we have armed people who really don't understand the NFL culture to react to it. And what I mean by that, Jay, is that they put that goofy NFLPA ratings out there. And what do people do? They go, oh boy, well, these players, they must be really mad at all this. No, and they don't, they can't get their veggies cut up. They got to cut them up themselves. It's like, my God, Kansas City voted their stadium and their locker room the worst for like 3 years. And yet all I see is, it's not slow singing and flower bringing out there. All I see is them competing for chance. I just overreact to that stuff because to me, I'll give you an extra. What do I got to give you? An extra $1 million because you have to drive in the snow. Like, that's the stuff that kind of just irks the hell out of me. And look, if you need a Shangri-La to go play, then don't come out early at Alabama. Stay all 4 years.
Well, your take actually makes me happy because when I saw Breer on set, it actually made me concerned as a fan who's not as connected as either of you.
And here's the thing, too. Vrabel was in the college world. He knows what those kids are coming from. And I think if anything else, it might be more of that in terms of the Mike can turn around and say to these guys, 10 years ago when I got out of ball, I went to Ohio State. I know what it was like. He understands the college culture, and not that Bill didn't. I just think that Bill got so much power here in New England, he didn't give a damn about anything. And he wasn't going to make anybody happy or placate anyone. Whereas with Vrabel, I think he's going to be a little more amenable to stuff like that. But no, Jay, I don't freak out at that because I'll tell you this. If next year the New England Patriots do nothing to their facilities and they go out and win 10 games and maybe get, beat in a wild card round, guys are going to start to look around and say, hey, you know what? That's a good place to play again. I don't care that they don't have a Chuck E. Cheese in the south corner for the players.
Yeah, great stuff. So we have such a gift doing a show on this Tuesday morning, March 11th, with what happened in NFL free agency yesterday. So forgive me. I'm staying there. I just want to talk to you about a couple names, okay? Davante freaking Adams, okay? 2 years, $46 million, Los Angeles Rams. I knew that he didn't want to or need to play with Aaron Rodgers. Certainly, they've been trying to move on from Cooper Kupp for a while. We'll get to Aaron Rodgers, but Davante on a team that I believe would have beaten Philadelphia had it not been snowing. That's a great signing for the Rams as WR2.
I love Davante Adams as a wide receiver one. I still think it's in him.
I agree.
I'm trying to answer the question without being a snarky dick because there's the part of me that wants to say, well, 3 years ago, everybody was pulling their pants down and streaking across the quad naked because Cooper Kupp was the greatest wide receiver we've ever seen with the greatest head coach and the smartest people ever. My God, Cooper Kupp is going to be a Hall of Famer. Now in 3 years, going to throw his white ass to the curb. Like, that just tickles me. I don't know why. Well, actually, I do know why, because I was told this guy was allegedly great and he plays with a genius, so get more out of him. fine, I digress. You went to Davante Adams. I'm devastated. Adams.
He had a bad injury and he slowed down. It's good business by McVay. It's not them just like being disloyal.
Interesting.
Continue.
No, because they went to another 32-year-old wide receiver. You would think
who you believe has more in the tank.
Absolutely. I love the guy, but we'll see if it's unlocked with the genius that is Sean McVay. But nevertheless, I want nothing to do with Cooper Kupp. I never did. I thought he was a byproduct of scheme and circumstance, in my opinion. But Davante Adams going to LA is a big deal. And what's a bigger deal is that they kept Alaric Jackson, the offensive line.
Yeah, good point.
So, you got to keep old man Stafford upright.
So in the front of your screen, one of our favorites, Sam Darnold. I'm really happy for him. He is now a Seattle Seahawk, 3 years, $100.5 million, $55 million guaranteed, reunited with Clint Kubiak, who he was with in San Francisco in 2023. Now, I want to hear your thoughts more than mine, as I said, right? You know I don't like Sam Darnold, and you don't either. So don't forget that with what I'm about to say. I do think there's more upside with Sam Darnold than Geno Smith, if I am a Seahawks fan. But upside, right? And Geno Smith going to the Raiders with Pete Carroll, old friend. But upside is a relative term, right? What is the upside in Seattle, right? Do I think they're going to be in contention for that division? Not really. I think they'd have to overachieve to make the postseason. But yeah, that mid-market quarterback, I guess $33 million. Your thoughts on Sammy Darnold?
Well, it's clearly just kind of a peekaboo deal, meaning we'll take a little look at you and then like the way it's structured.
$55 million peekaboo.
Yeah, no, that's really what it is. I mean, think about it, right, Jay? So if it were a 3-year deal for $100 million, you're just looking at it in terms of basic numbers and saying that Sam Darnold went out and got roughly $33 million a year, which works in terms of the way people are being paid. But if we're being real about it, it's much more like a 2-year deal for $55 million, where you're paying your QB around 27.5, and you're maintaining the flexibility to move on from the guy if the real Sam Darnold shows up. The Clint Kubiak piece is huge because it's clearly Clint Kubiak's guy. And it also goes to show that new head coach, Mike McDonald out there, is at least being heard in terms of maybe the way he wants to go build that roster. And I'm with you. It's just an unbelievable story for Sam Darnold. Like, if this is it for Sam Darnold and he gets his 20 or 55 million and he's out the door, exit stage left, guy would have survived about 10 years in the NFL, made a pile of money. Who's going to look at someone and be like, you failure? No way.
Oh, great point. And gosh, as you know, I do feel bad for him still, right? What at the end of last season, right? Losing at the end of the regular season and then the postseason exit. But, to be able to sort of prove yourself again with that type of deal, I really am happy for him. And Colin Cowherd, who I do revere, was so high on Sam Darnold really all the way back to the draft. And there's so much there. I think if he can figure it out upstairs fully, I don't know. I don't think he ever can. If you're not going to figure it out fully with Kevin O'Connell, maybe you don't. But I think it was good that Minnesota is moving on from him. And speaking of Minnesota, they got go ahead.
Yeah. Well, what is this Minnesota Aaron Rodgers stuff that is out there? I am not feeling this whatsoever.
Yeah, well, a big lineman, though, your guy, Will Fries, Vikings, 5 years, $88 million, right? So that's a nice signing for.
That's that's somebody I wanted in New England. That was a guy about 15. Hold on, 88, 5, whatever.
I could tell you like him that much with that deal, and Kevin O'Connell likes him just as much as you, apparently.
Yeah, you got to take care. Everybody makes a big deal about the tackles, and it is important. If your guards are leaky in the modern NFL with these penetrating defensive linemen like Milton Williams and others, there's going to end up you're going to have a problem, especially with certain quarterbacks. Now, J.J. McCarthy's young. He can move around a little bit. But how about that NFC North, by the way, now? Talk about business picking up pretty quickly. Green Bay feels like they're being left behind. Detroit's good enough. Chicago's revamped their whole offensive line.
Yeah. Oh, it's just fascinating all across the league. I want to circle back to Aaron Rodgers, but let's talk about a couple things. Appreciate Cody in the chat. Daniel Jones, 1 year, $14 million with the Indianapolis Colts. Many thought Minnesota Vikings were very much wanting him to back up J.J. McCarthy. That's not happening. And Daniel Jones has got a nice contract with the New York Giants. Happy to take 1 year, $14 million with a great chance to start, I would think. Go ahead.
There you go. That's the thing, is that now that screams to me that there's going to be a real quarterback competition. Now in Indianapolis, I think they brought in someone just good enough to win the job, but not good enough to blow their incumbent quarterback out of the water, because you would look like a dopey GM like Chris Ballard has at times if you bring in this guy who's viewed to be a flame out with the Giants, and he comes in and beats the guy that you took with the 3rd or 4th pick overall. It's a bad look all the way around.
I agree. And I also very much like, in terms of a backup quarterback, your points are very well taken about getting a veteran, especially behind a guy like Drake May. But I like the Patriots have Josh Dobbs coming, who can move a little bit, which I like. But Daniel Jones, I think, behind Anthony Richardson, or certainly that offense, if an offense can work for Anthony Richardson, I like how Daniel Jones moves. So I think I like getting a guy as the backup that can move if your number one quarterback can move. Free agent quarterback still out there. Aaron Rodgers. Oh, Mac Jones is a free agent. Jameis Winston. Joe Flacco's out there. So Jimmy Garoppolo, 1 year, $4 million back to the Rams as the backup. I thought that was interesting. So Aaron Rodgers, right? A lot of rumbles that Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler.
He should be. He should be. It's the best place for him. And they went out and got goofy DK Metcalf, where personality-wise, I'm glad he's gone to Mike Tomlin, because I think Tomlin would be the guy who would say to DK, hey, listen, here's how we do things. The old Lou Brown line at Major League. We wear caps and sleeves at this level, son. That kind of deal, where I wonder, like, potentially putting DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers on the same roster could be explosive on and off the field.
I agree. And I'm going to stay on DK Metcalf for a sec. Mike Salk, who's in Seattle, right, knows the game well. I think he knows the UFC pretty well, too. But he just talks about DK. And I'm going to quote him, always been really good, never quite been elite. He says, we have these conversations. There's a reason why each time these best of lists come around, DK, even by his peers, is not rated one of the top 10, 12 wide receivers in the league. He goes on to say he just doesn't have elite hands, right? That's a big contract. I would not be thrilled here if the Patriots had traded and made that move for DK Metcalf. You're higher on Aaron Rodgers, I think, than I am. Mm-hmm. The idea that he's going to come into Pittsburgh and be anything more than Russell Wilson or Justin Fields were last year, maybe make some noise in the regular season, but I just doesn't move the needle that much for me.
I did this study the other day, and if you just took what Aaron Rodgers was last year and you put him into the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, their passing yards go up, their passing touchdowns go up. And I think this is one of those, don't compare Aaron Rodgers to what he was an MVP level guy 3 or 4 years ago. I compare him to the rest of the field. And when I look at, it's either Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston, or you start to do the list of the remaining free agent quarterbacks, it's not even a question. Yes, Aaron Rodgers isn't perfect, but he by far, to me, is the best guy for the job. Now, think of this, Jay.
I agree.
If we get to this point where Aaron Rodgers goes to Pittsburgh, you're now going to have in that division Rodgers, Jackson, Burrow. In the AFC East, you've got obviously Josh Allen, and I got a little note on that as well. We know what's going on out in the West. You're stacking up the quarterbacks now, right? But to me, Aaron Rodgers would represent a possible shift, because instead of the Ravens being in the AFC semifinals or the divisional round, I could easily be Pittsburgh sliding in there, and you give Aaron Rodgers and Mike Tomlin the old chip in a chair, and they got a chance to go on a run.
I hear you, and I'm not looking for Aaron Rodgers to be MVP Rodgers, but I hope his mobility, I hope he's a little bit better than he was last year in terms of the mobility, healed from the Achilles. But if we sort of shift to Aaron Glenn and the New York Jets, bringing in Justin Fields, which I like. You get $30 million guaranteed, 2 years, $40 million. I absolutely love it. Do you agree?
No. Wait. Do you love it as a good move for the Jets or a good move for the Patriots? Because Justin Fields going to the Jets is great for everybody in the AFC East.
That's hilarious, and I do agree with you, and maybe this is a little bit of a pipe dream, but no, I actually do love it for the Jets. And I say it because I don't think the Jets are truly contending this year, right? He played 2 years at Ohio State with Garrett Wilson in 19 and 20. I like Justin. He's one of the greatest running quarterbacks this league has ever seen. But yeah, do I think there's some real issues in terms of him seeing the field and being able to read coverages? I do. But I think some of these teams are making transitions, whether it's transitioning from a new culture. And so I think the Raiders have very specific things they're doing. And I don't hate what they're doing. It is, to me, a bridge with the Raiders. I don't hate Geno Smith there, but with what the Jets are doing, if I'm a Jets fan, I'm very excited to watch Justin Fields. I'm very glad to move on from Aaron Rodgers, and I like how the organization is moving forward. So I do like it, even though Justin Fields may be limited.
It feels like the Jets are doing what the Jets would normally do. And last time it was, let's go get a coordinator from a team that's hot, and they plucked Saleh from San Francisco. Now they end up going with Aaron Glenn, where they do have a little bit of familiarity, but what they're hoping for is hope at wide receiver, a quarterback. That's really all it is. You're hoping Justin Fields does well. And if he does, then maybe it becomes a situation where you keep around Aaron Glenn. Or in 2 years, there's public outcry. The quarterback isn't good. The head coach can't figure it out. And you're right back where you were just 2 years down the road because you had your fingers crossed that the quarterback was going to come through. So could there be success there? Yes, I'm not going to rule it out. But it feels like kind of the same pattern. I tweeted out Jets are going to jet. And thank God, because Miami really did nothing yesterday in free agency. They're limited on draft picks. They're limited on money. The second place in the AFC East is right there for the Patriots to go grab again, in part because of some of the idiocy and inactivity around them.
Oh, I agree. I mean, there's so much going on in that Patriots organization. I just think it's going to be a whole different situation moving forward. A couple other signings I just want to ask you about quickly. Hassan Reddick, 1 year, $14 million with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, very savvy, hanging on to Godwin. I don't love Baker Mayfield ultimately, but I think that's a nice piece on the defensive side of the ball, a guy that has a lot to prove that could, catapult himself to getting a bigger deal after that one season.
Yeah, I think it was one of those deals where he overplayed his hand, and Reddick ended up finding himself kind of on the outside looking in. And now with a market reset and the guy, not having played a ton of football last year, if you're Tampa, that's a pretty good value add. I don't know if he's going to be, and I think you did nail it too, Jay, if this guy ends up having a great year and puts up good numbers, then maybe he can try to go out and get the contract he was possibly looking for last time out. Not a bad move, but Tampa feels like they're doing enough to hang around to win 10 games, have a home playoff game every year, and then lose.
I agree. Sticking with the edge rushers, Josh Sweat. You talked about Damian Woody, offensive lineman for the Patriots back in the day, sort of some guys maybe for the Eagles winning a Super Bowl, getting some dollars. So Josh Sweat, Arizona Cardinals, 4 years, over $76 million, $41 million guaranteed, reuniting with Jonathan Gannon, who was the DC in Philadelphia for 2 years. I like Sweat more than most. A lot of change for the kid. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it was kind of running back to daddy a little bit with Jonathan Gannon. And I think that now more and more, Jay, I wasn't as in tune on this originally, but clearly it's kind of showing up where who did a guy play for early in the league that they really like, who may have moved on and is now going to give me my big money. And that's clearly what happened here. Hey, listen, Josh Sweat might go out there and he might be perfect. He might be great when it's all said and done. And yet you're in the vast nomad wasteland of Arizona where maybe they make the playoffs, maybe they don't, but little calamari runs around and makes everybody happy.
Yeah, and they had some moments. I think it's a team on the come up. I will say it's such a phenomenal league. There, when you go, we often talk about how many good quarterbacks are there, right? 32 guys. How many good but as you go through some of these divisions, and even when you try to find a place for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, starting to stack up a little bit at that position with some depth. A guy like Will Levis, who was maybe a guy in Tennessee, is that guy a starter? No. And as we sort of shift there, so the draft, right? I mean, you say Travis Hunter is favored to go to the Patriots right now, plus 185, plus 190. So Cam Ward, you think he goes number one overall?
I don't.
I don't either.
I just don't, and I'm not. I feel the market because history tells us that someone will fall in love with the quarterback and they'll go jump up to number one. I don't think Tennessee is taking Cam Ward number one. I don't think they're taking Shedeur Sanders number one. To me, they've loved Abdul Carter. They have for a while. Now, does this little Carter injury flare up with his foot kind of scare them away a little bit? My gut tells me no, I don't think it's going to. And unless Cam Ward has an unbelievable workout for somebody along the way, Jay, either I'm completely missing this market or the market is completely missing one of the two.
Oh, it's just so interesting to me. And when you think about the Patriots, I guess for me, I'm always my anticipation for the NFL draft, I could argue maybe is greater than my anticipation for week one of the NFL season.
Mm-hmm.
And this year is so unique because it's not as though I'm going to be heartbroken if Travis Hunter is not on the board at 4 because I don't expect him to be there. But I just have so much confidence. I said before free agency is going to be hard for the Patriots to mess this up. And it really, right, they haven't messed up free agency in terms of so far. And I even think for the draft, I think it's going to be difficult for them to mess it up. I think it's not outside of the realm of possibility that they may want to move up to make sure they get Travis Hunter, though. I don't know, man. I think it's going to be just fascinating. I think Abdul Carter could be there given the injury. Go ahead.
There's going to be a guy that people fall in love with. And the question is, who does that become in this process? You would figure it would most likely be a quarterback, but you see, I mean, if the board worked out right there, like Tankathon has it, where it's Ward, Carter, and Sanders, and Hunter is there, man, that's going to be a really tough choice because with the way the roster is being built right now, it almost looks like the number 4 pick or whatever they do with that pick, maybe slide down, is going to go to an offensive lineman where you can bring in a big left tackle. But man, oh man, if you're sitting there number 4 and your choice is Travis Hunter and Mason Graham, I don't know how you make that. Would be think about this, Jay. You and I do this show for an hour once a week, right? And you and I would have a hard time fleshing out taking Hunter or Graham in just an hour. And the Patriots have to have that discussion done, locked up, and ready so that when they have maybe their 15 minutes, they can bicker over, okay, which guy are we really going to go with? Or is that the perfect scenario with Hunter and Graham on the board where you can maybe slide down a little bit and still get your offensive linemen? I would say stay there, but that's what's great about this roster right now is that at bare minimum, you can put 46 pro football players on the field, let alone whomever you add coming up in the draft.
I remember all these years as a Patriots fan, the offseason was just a different experience. And the regular season, I remember certain regular seasons as a Patriots fan, NFL Sunday wasn't all that exciting, right? You sort of know what you're going to get. Really likely they're going to win, oftentimes by double digits. And then these fans of these other NFL teams, week to week, these 500 teams just living and dying. It's really, you could argue, just as exciting. And so to be able to be back, Gresh, I feel like a child. It really feels like for 20 years, I haven't been able to be a fan of an NFL team trying to sort of break through. And that is so fun as a fan, even as I approach age 50.
Well, look at how we just talked about the draft, right? And Cody threw up in the chat. If Shadir's there at number 4, do you trade to 6 with Brady's Vegas Raiders? Yeah, I think you do. You can slide down because you know which one of those guys is going to come off the board, and it does you go get you another middle round pick or even something for next year's draft. Pluck it from the Raiders because they're not going to be very good. But the reason I bring that scenario up, Jay, is because we now are back to the everything is on the table. Last year it was, well, whichever of the 3 fall to us, we'll just take that guy and hope for the best because we like all of them. Now we're back to choice. Now we're back to choosing. Now we're back to roster building. Now we're back to it really is best player available. And you can bicker over which is the best player available because outside of quarterback, they would all fit on this roster somewhere, even though the roster is better than it was yesterday.
Can you imagine if I want to give Bob Kraft credit, or Jonathan, whoever was willing to make the decision to let Gerrit Mayo go, even though, he just got 1 year, because
Right.
had they said, we got to give him another year, right? What they would have, not very few of these transactions take place. It is unbelievable what this Mike Vrabel signing has done.
Well, and it's, I think the organization realized that, it sounded like a good idea in theory of, well, just do opposite of what Bill did. If Bill's a troglodyte, then, let's get into the 2025s. And they did by getting their asses fired because they didn't know what they were doing. Dopey Robin Glazer being connected to Gerrit Mayo. You know what I want, Jay? There are two New England football mysteries that must be solved, and they both tie into Bill Belichick in a weird way. I need to see photo evidence of this godlike mural that was painted of Gerrit Mayo inside the Patriots organization on one of those walls where it was like he was football Jesus and had his hand on the head of a little child and all this stuff. So the mural with Mayo, it's probably already painted over, but I want visual evidence. And Nutty Bob Diaco is now the defensive line coach with Bill Belichick in North Carolina. He was the head coach at UConn who came up with the goofy idea for the conflict trophy, CONFLICT, con, and then flick for the University of Florida. Somewhere there's a trophy sitting somewhere in New England of this goofy thing that Nutty Bob Diaco had created. But anyway, Belichick leaves. They try to paint someone else the Messiah on the wall. That blows up. And then you got old Nutty Bob. If I get down to North Carolina, Diaco hates me, by the way. I hammered him in Hartford. He was a total goof, right? There's one of those, I'm the head football coach for all of the state of Connecticut. Get the hell out of here. Take yourself too seriously. But I want to know where that trophy is, damn it. So anyway, can I give you, because I know that you are giddy over Drake May. And I've kind of slow played it a little bit.
You kind of look like Drake May, by the way. Go ahead.
I'm fat old Drake May. Can I have the bank account? I'll take it. Can I give you a little background on Josh Dobbs and why he is the perfect guy to be the backup to Drake May?
Please.
And Joe Milton? So my former college teammate, other than Darren Rizzi, who went into the URI Hall of Fame this weekend, I didn't go to the party. I'm a loser. But
you are.
I know. I don't leave the house. My former quarterback at URI is a guy named Chris Hickson. Hickson played in the Arena League for about 10 years. He partnered up with Trent Dilfer, right? And they created a thing called QBIQ. If you go to QBIQsystem.com, you'll learn more about this. One of their guys is Josh Dobbs. And in fact, I have talked to Hickson before about Josh Dobbs kind of being one of the star pupils. Now, QBIQ is a system, Jay, that tells you basically, here are the safe throws you can make against this coverage, against that coverage. It really is a way to teach you how to read defenses at the NFL level. And when you look into QBIQ system, you'll see right on there, there's Dilfer, there's Coach Hickson. And if you scroll down, it'll say right there, QBIQ, keep going there, Code, the number one pre-snap read. Oh, it hasn't loaded yet. I'm sorry. But right underneath the graphic there, there's Josh Dobbs saying QBIQ is the number one pre-snap reading system in the country. I only bring that up because if we're looking for the next step and the next level, there it is right there, for Drake May to take, Josh Dobbs has been learning for years how to be able to help these guys kind of take a step forward in their own career by learning how to read some defense. So I know that there have been times where I haven't been as giddy, but I'm giddy over this because I think the match of Dobbs and May and Milton as well. Let's not forget they still got Joe Milton on this roster, another young quarterback who needs to grow. You got some real teachers there in that room to go along with Josh McDaniels.
That is absolute music to my ears. And he's half the price of Jacoby Brissett. Right, so we'll take it. Jacoby got 1 year, $8 million last year. So we'll take.
And you got a better, and you got a guy who knows his role. there's not going to be even being taken. You know, like I felt that Brissett, as the year went on, Jay, it was kind of like, maybe I should be in there. Or, you know, it didn't feel like it was. Now, maybe Mayo was a big part of that as well. But I think with this guy, with Dobbs, he's comfortable in his own skin. He doesn't need to make a ton of, you know, he's a guy who's like, yeah, I'll stack those years on the pension. Like, I'll get my money on the back end. He's a solid pro. And look, again, only because I've talked to somebody that I trust about him, that's why I feel great about the Dobbs-May marriage combined with McDaniels. It's good.
And Dobbs also started a couple games, I believe, for Mike Vrabel in Tennessee at the end of 2022 and performed quite well. Give me fucking all of this.
Yeah,
I knew you would.
I sat on that to tell you that today because I knew it would get you all jacked up about Drake May, because it actually got me. When I heard that match, I was like, oh, that is like, that's Vrabel being on point from the jump.
And Gresh, I will say, as a gambler or even as a talking head at times, I always would be more of the devil's advocate take when it comes to Boston sports, right? Where I would say, oh, the Celtics, it's so hard to go back to back. It's not going to happen. Whereas right now, I'd say, no, I think this year has played out perfectly. I like the adversity, a little bit of banged up here or there, but, you know, sort of have a great opportunity to peak at the perfect time. Red Sox, 25-1 to win the World Series. Garrett Cole, Tommy John surgery, right? That's probably not 25-1 anymore. But even as a Red Sox fan, I'm super, super optimistic. Like, I think they have a great shot. And I'm not suggesting that I believe the Patriots are a Super Bowl contender, but this roster has not been fully built. There's a lot to achieve in the draft. And I'm telling you, do I think they can make some noise? Stranger things have happened, right? It's a tournament at the end of the season. Do I think the Patriots have a chance to get in the tournament? Yes. And the fact that I'm saying that after last year blows my mind. As a Boston sports fan, I couldn't be more excited. And hockey's my fourth sport. Brad Marchand to the Florida Panthers. How's that? That's a tough pill to swallow. Did they get enough back?
Yeah, no, but they weren't going to. He's old and needs a contract. So if the Bruins are going to do it, they needed to do it last year, not this year. But, you know, that doesn't fly in Boston, to turn around and trading your captain and a guy that I actually kind of got into it with a little bit once.
Of course. Isn't it love or hate, Gresh? Does anyone just like you? Either love or hate?
You.
Go ahead.
I think it's you. You might be the one. You're the.
I got love. I got love.
Funny. But when it comes to with Boston, you couldn't blow it up. But you know, Charlie Coyle, I was all over Charlie Coyle one year, and they went out and scored like 30 goals. And I see him at the Jimmy Fund thing, and I told him straight up, I'm like, yo, man, I dogged you out and I'm going to apologize like right away. And he was like, I was wondering if you were going to say something. And he was actually really cool about it. You know, that I think Charlie ended up in Colorado, I think it was. So the Bruins did what they had to do, but no, it's, you know what it is? Ultimately, it catches up to you. What the Bruins were doing, Jay, was a lot like what the New Orleans Saints have done for 10 years. They're just like kicking the can down the road, kicking it down the road. And eventually it comes due and you got to do the hard reset. So in terms of the hard reset, here are the players who were on the 24 New England Patriots and the guys that are going to replace them. Devon Godshaw out, Milton Williams in. Jonathan Jones out, Carlton Davis in. Dietrich Wise out, Harold Landry in.
Haven't even talked about him.
Sione Takitaki out, Robert Spillane in. Daniel Ekwale out. I'm going to go with Kyrus. Tonga, Big Tonga is in. Jacoby Brissett out, Josh Dobbs in, and your ads right now were Morgan Moses and Matt Collins. So if you just look at it in terms of guys that kind of aged out on this roster or dudes that you just wanted to move on from, I feel like you got better versions of what you had across the board. And just that alone has strengthened the roster.
And they need a kicker. Maybe Justin Tucker be released, right? A lot of stuff going on off the field.
I'm going to say Robert Kraft might steer away from that one. I mean, you know what? That might be the, hey, boss, we need a kicker. As long as it isn't the guy who stole my masseuse, then we're okay. I mean, I don't know if they want to go down the road of that one. But to your point, you know, a guy like Justin Tucker might be out there. I'm not saying kickers are a dime a dozen because they're not. But if we had Nick Folk, you know, if we were coming off a couple of years of Nick Folk, who, by the way, Vrabel gobbled up in Tennessee as soon as he became available, who knows? We might just have Nick Folk for another year because I think Behringer can boom the thing out of the back of the end zone on kickoffs. But, Jay, you got to be excited for yesterday. I think you and I had put the appropriate amount of proper expectations on day one. Now they've kind of got back to par. That's the way I look at it now. Now you got, okay, I got 46 guys that I know. I might not be able to completely win with, but I can field a team. Now let's go add more pieces to the roster. And by the way, the roster is much bigger than 45 guys. It's just I've narrowed down that you can put together a group that, right now the wide receiver group would be Matt Collins, Pop Douglas, Booty, Bourne, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker. There's a long way to go there.
No way that room looks anything remotely close to that, in my opinion, by the time the season begins.
And you know what? And that's the thing, because here's the dream that I put out there for T. Higgins, right? If the Patriots love T. Higgins that much, the DK Metcalf deal actually helped because so even though people would say T. Higgins better player, also he's been franchised. So by rule in the NFL, if you were to assign the guy to an offer sheet, it would cost you 2 first-round picks. So here's what I do. I call Cincinnati and I say, look, I'll pay you the going rate. I'll give you the second rounder for T. Higgins. And what we'll do in the first round is we'll do a pick swap. So you go from 4 to 17. You give us the second round pick. We'll give you T. Higgins. That way, if you're New England, you can trade back if you want to from 17. It's high enough. Or there's where you get your offensive lineman. And in essence, you've turned the number 4 pick into a starting offensive lineman and T. Higgins, because you would have drafted somebody in the second round anyway. You still end up with 2 players for 2 picks. You just got there a little differently, and you brought in a wide receiver you're probably going to have to give $175 million to, which I think at this point New England would try to find somebody that can move the needle. But you don't have to give up a gaggle of picks to go get this guy. To me, it's 1, and then you're just farting around with where you're picking in the order of the first round. I don't think it's that hard. I put it out on Twitter, Jay. It was like I dropped one of the 10 commandments, for God's sakes.
I absolutely love all of it and don't really even have much to add. I would sign up for that if I was a New England Patriots fan. I think it's unlikely to happen. I think the idea that the Bengals seem to be moving on from Hendrickson, I think tells you all you need to know. I don't think T. Higgins is getting out of that door, but I love that, Gresh.
Well, think of this, okay? If let's say Cincinnati had a halcyon moment just quickly, and they said, we'll just take the number 4 pick for T. Higgins, or Travis Hunter's on the board. What do? You could give up just straight up number 4 for T. Higgins, or you're on the board. It's either you're trading it for T or you're drafting Travis Hunter.
I don't even have to think about it. If that means T. Higgins comes to town for another 4 or 5 years with a signed contract, it's T. Higgins every day of the week.
It's so funny you say that, because that would be the one caveat where I would be like, I think I'm going to take the kid, as crazy as it sounds, because there's a great wide receiver in Travis Hunter as well, and it's just a matter of which side of the ball do you want to play him on. Now, there could also be the Travis is so good we don't know where to play him and scares some people off, as crazy as it sounds.
Well, and I do not think he's going to be a bust. I think he's going to be great, but there have been busts in the past, and T. Higgins is certainly not that. And also, I'm saying that about T. Higgins after what they did yesterday, right? So you're adding T. Higgins to what they've already done. Then I think it would be up to Drake May if he develops really quickly. I do believe they would be entering the conversation of being a contender.
And just quickly, in terms of this offensive tackle market, you and I have talked about Will Campbell, the kid from LSU. A lot of people think he might translate better at guard, especially after Mekhi Becton kicked inside for Philadelphia and played well. But Armand Membo is a guy to keep an eye on. He's from Missouri. And right now, first offensive lineman selected, it's Will Campbell -110. Membo is -105.
Wow.
So if there is some maybe disagreement in the scouts world on these O-linemen, that might sort of force the Patriots to kind of trade down a little bit if the cosmic player, let's say, isn't there. By the way, the Celtics are kind of cruising along at this point. Let's hope that old Kristaps Porzingis gets over his viral infection or whatever. I view Kristaps like LeBron. fine. Like LeBron pulled his groin, just be there for game one. That's how I look at for Porzingis, right? Mid-April, be there for game one, and all is forgiven. That's all we need.
Oh, say no more. The Celtics such a fun team to follow I say that today, whereas a month ago I wouldn't have said that. But they have these little hiccups, and then bang, it's like 5 straight games, and they are the best team in the NBA. And I'm excited to watch them try and defend their title. This would be quite an accomplishment for these guys. We've said it multiple times. Tatum and Brown need more than one. Dynasties are multiple.
Correct. And if you look out west right now, everybody's making a big deal about the Lakers. Here comes Denver. Well, the Warriors are hot, but look out for Denver. I think we looked it up the other day. Celtics over Denver, exact match for the NBA Finals. Exact result was like plus 2,200. I'm feeling that more and more. When the Joker goes for a triple-double in each half he plays in, that's gross. I don't know if you saw that stat.
Yeah, and
he had like over 30 points, 21 rebounds, 22 assists. But when you broke it down by play time in 26-minute and 30-second blocks, Joker had a triple-double in each half he would have played in that game where they beat Phoenix.
Unbelievable. First player ever to go 30-20-20. I mean, it's insane.
And after the game was like, did my horse finish good in race? Like, he doesn't even care. He doesn't even, he's like some of these MMA guys where they're just like matter of fact about it, right? Like Islam Makhachev can stick my big toe in my ass if he really wants to and stretch me, right? But it's, he's like he just coldly says to DC, what was it? Send your son to Dagestan, 2-3 years, forget about him. Like that. Yeah. That feels like Jokic. He's like, yes, I have great NBA success, but the horse has colic. I need to leave. Right. Like, you think about it. It's wild. Anyway, by the way, download the John Anik app, which is out there as well. The John Anik app. Jay and John had the best promo for it that was on social media while they were in Vegas. Go find it. I don't know why your brother's saying application, just tickles me. But how about this? Your brother is so famous, he has his own freaking app.
Oh, he's not so famous. But you know what's funny? He gets so mad when I say National Football League or Ultimate Fighting Championship, yet he's extending app to its fullest form of application.
Right.
All right, Gresh, get us out of here.
Let it fly. Yeah. You gotta zing your brother once. Anyway, great job by Cody Merrow. Follow Cody on Twitter at Cody_Merrow. You can get Jay at Boston Anik. You can get me at The Real Gresh. That is it for us. We do a heavy NFL. We'll be heavy NFL next week as well. And the NCAA basketball tournament brackets, baby. We'll be able to get into that as well. And that's another edition of Gas. We'll see you next week.